Thriving in a turbulent times. Anybody feel like we're in turbulent times? You know, I was thinking as I was driving in, I've lived a few years more than half a century, and I can't think of any time that felt as turbulent. Of course, you know, when there were turbulent times in Vietnam and things like that, I was a little too young to recognize it, but it just seems to me that this is some of the worst that we've experienced, especially this sense of divisiveness and separation that seems to be going on. As I was preparing for my talk this week, I always look at my calendars and stuff like that, and you know, I have the international holidays and things on there. Well, today happens to be Dharma Day. Dharma Day is the day that Buddha, Gautama Buddha, gave his very first sermon. It's where he introduced his Four Noble Truths. The celebration is one of the highest holy days in the Buddhist tradition, where they begin to look at these and remember what those Four Noble Truths were, and how Buddha talked about practicing them. He gave this sermon in a place called Deer Park, and it was to 5 of his ascetic friends. Buddha had left his life as a royal prince and became an ascetic, and a person who refused to eat very much, didn't take any money, lived very austere life, and just they said he was trying. At one point, he was trying to be thin enough that he could see his spine through the front of his stomach. That's how thin he wanted to become, because of this was supposed to be the path to enlightenment, to be this ascetic. Anyway, he had 5 friends that he was giving this lecture to. This was right after he had had his moment of enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. And so in the Four Noble Truths that Buddha talked about in that first sermon are, the first one is, there is only suffering. Suffering exists in the world. Suffering is caused by our desires, our cravings, our wants, and so forth. There is a state that is beyond cravings and desires and suffering. And the way to get that state is called nirvana. The way to get to that is to follow the 8 Noble Truths. So the 8 Noble Truths, just give you a quick idea here, because this actually does lead right into my talk. So the right view means to look at things from a point of view of non-judgmentalness. You know, just to look at things and take them as at their face value, and not try to assign some kind of meaning to it, but to take it as a truth as you see it. The right intention is to, do no harm. You know, if we're going about things and acting with good intention, then we're not setting out to suffer, for anyone to suffer from it. The right speech, what are the words that we're saying to ourselves and to others. I remember the first time I ever heard the phrase, "My name is not safe on your tongue," and how powerful that felt to me. It was like, oh my, what a way. They weren't saying it about me, they said it about someone else, but thank God. Thank God, just saying. Fortunately, I haven't been accused of that too often, but it's like, would I want that person who speaks that way to use my name in any context at all? Right action, again, do what's right when we know what's right, and do things that do not cause harm. Right livelihood is to work in an ethical manner, to make sure that our work reflects who we are. Right effort is to, put our best into it, and to, not be lazy and so forth, but to actually do what's right there. Right concentration has to do with how we think about things, whether we're being, taking things in and not twisting them all around in our heads and getting them into something that it isn't meant to be. And then right mindfulness. And remember, mindfulness is about awareness, staying present in the moment and not judging it. And so these are the 8 Noble Truths. The eightfold path, the 4 Noble Truths, eightfold path. So this leads right into our idea of what we call in science of mind, law of mind in action. This isn't a phrase that gets used very often, but Ernest Brother Fenwick wrote a book that's actually called The Law of Mind in Action. And a lot of our thoughts come from this idea of the law of mind in action. So thoughts are things. What we think becomes our reality. My favorite, change your thinking, change your life. Or as Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. You know, how we begin to take our minds to create our experiences. Our inner state of being, our consciousness, our way of being actually determines the experiences that we have in the outer world. And so that's can be a really powerful thing to remember, especially when we're dealing with turmoil, with challenges and things like that. When we had, last weekend, when we had the assassination attempt, I know I instantaneously had some rather unproductive thoughts come to my mind. Just saying. And I remember thinking, it's like, oh, no, I don't really want to be thinking that. That is not the way that I want to have this be my experience here. But, I was coming from a reactionary place in my life there, and so I had to really begin to think about that. And that set me on a path of trying to figure out how we as religious scientists can make sense of the turbulent times that we're going through. And what has occurred to me over and over again is to go back to the heart. I was so blessed that Karen spent so much time with that intro meditation on the heart, because it is all about going back to our heart and coming from our heart. If we are following that eightfold path of that Buddha talked about, we are doing everything by coming from our heart. We're not doing it coming from our head as much as we are thinking about our impact of our words, thinking about the impact of our actions, thinking about what we do and how it affects the world around us. And again, like I said, this ties right into this idea of the law of mind in action. Our minds are very creative. We talk about the creative process all the time with our science of mind symbol here that illustrates the way that spirit moves into form and form returns to spirit. We are thinking beings, and we can control what we think when we are very purposeful about it. And when we come from a place of heart-centeredness, I think there's a lot of things that can change in our lives based on that. Now, there are some really good practices. We talk about practices all the time here. There's some really good practices that we can do to help us watch our thoughts and to change our thoughts, to change the things that we're thinking and begin to have a different experience. One of those is our powerful affirmations, just like the one that we used here this morning. We start every Sunday service with a powerful affirmation written by one of our practitioners. Today's were by Christine Page, I believe. Yes, thank you. And so these powerful affirmations can help us begin to shift or remind us of the shift that we want to have take place in our life. And so they help us reprogram our mind, basically. And we can do all kinds of different things with that, repeating them over and over again. I know I used to wear a mala bracelet, one with beads on it, and I would repeat my affirmations the number of times that were on the bead. It was 27, so I would rotate that all the time. And I mostly did it while I was driving, which might sound like it wasn't safe, but it was really easy to just keep that going with my thumb as I was driving my car and repeating those affirmations to myself and shifting the way I believed about a lot of things in my life. And so that's one of our really powerful practices. Another one that we use is visioning and visualization. Actually, two different things. Visioning helps us catch a glimpse of what's possible, what we call God's highest idea for what is possible in the situation. And then visioning is more of a mental activity that helps us cement those ideas in our experience. We'll begin to create that visual picture of it in our mind and make it the way that we want it to be. You've all probably seen vision boards, or if nothing else, you've put a picture on your refrigerator to help remind you of whatever it was that you were wanting to have in your life. That's visualization, where we begin to keep fresh before us our moments of high resolve. keep fresh before us those things that we want to experience in our lives. So as I said, I was doing a lot of research this week, and I kept being drawn to things about the heart. And so I went to one of my favorite books, which is written by Brene Brown. It's called Atlas of the Heart. Atlas of the Heart is a phenomenal book. If you haven't gotten a copy of it or you haven't read it before, I really suggest it. First off, it is a beautiful book. It would be like a coffee table book where you could leave it out on your coffee table and let people look at it. It's also a dictionary. In this book, she talks about 88 different emotions that we experience. I had no idea we had 88 different emotions, but apparently we do. And then what was interesting was the way that she explained what emotion was that we were feeling and how we moved from one emotion to another emotion in there. And so one of the chapters in the book is what to do when you're in challenge, what to do when your life is in turmoil, as we've talked about. And so I went to that chapter, and I found this wonderful graphic in there. She calls them the four horsemen, coming from the Christian New Testament of the book of Revelations, the four horsemen of the apocalypse. These are the four emotions that we often experience that cause the most damage in our existence. I know the graphic's a little small there, but so the first one is criticism. So when we have something happen in our life, the first thing that we often do is we criticize things about it. I know I found myself doing that after the assassination attempt, criticizing all kinds of things about that situation. It's kind of a go-to response. When we feel distressed, then we verbally attack or we blame others for whatever's going on in that situation. The next thing that she talks about is defensiveness. Sometimes when we're in these kind of situations, especially like that, what happened then, I automatically caught myself, and then I felt like I had done something wrong. And so I got kind of defensive about it. Where it's like I had to not prove that I was right, but I felt shame inside of myself for some of the things that I felt, and that led to this idea of defensiveness. So it's kind of victimizing ourselves. When we have perceived some kind of an attack, we feel like we've been victimized in that situation, and sometimes it's self-induced. Well, a lot of times, probably most times, it's self-induced. And so it's one of those things that we can really begin to shift in our lives. Watch how we respond. Going back to that eightfold path. What is our right speech? How are we responding to things? How are we looking at things in there? The next one is contempt, and I'm going to talk about contempt a little bit more in a moment. But contempt is one of the most damaging and negative forms of communications that we have. When we have contempt, we are looking down on another person, and we want to exclude them or ignore them when we feel contempt. Contempt often leads to disgust. Contempt is one thing in itself, but disgust is taking it to another level. To feel disgust, it comes from a sense that something is offensive in there. Contempt is, like I said, has this idea of we want to exclude something or hold it as not being worthy. But disgust takes it to a whole different level. And disgust then is what has become, from what I can see in our world, disgust is really rampant. I know when I think about certain political decisions that have been made in the recent years, I feel disgusted that anybody could think that way. And for me, it's even, like I said, it takes it even beyond contempt. It's something that I can't quite even begin to understand how that could ever come to be. So this idea of disgust here, we take those emotions that have kept us safe, feeling okay in the world, and we've turned it into an emotion that will make us sick, that will actually begin to deteriorate our society. And I believe that's what's happened a lot with all of this sense of separation. In the past, we were able to have a point of view that was different from somebody else's point of view, and yet we still got along. It's becoming more and more challenging to do that in these last few years here. And the thing that we take with disgust versus contempt is disgust is directed towards something, generally directed towards someone. We feel disgust towards someone's actions. We feel disgust towards someone's way of being. And all of this is triggered by the feeling that something is adversive, in other words, it's against us, or something is repulsive, I don't want it anywhere near me, or this is my favorite one, or toxic. How many times have you heard the phrase, this is a toxic environment that we're in right now? It's a word that's getting used a lot as we look at the situation that's been going on in our country and in other parts of the world. But this feeling of disgust, as I said, it's directed towards others. And there's a sense that we want to project that outwards in a way that can be harmful to other people. And when we do that, something gets triggered inside of us that tells us we're wrong. I shouldn't be thinking that. I know better than that. I don't treat people that way. I don't think about people that way. And so then we kind of become disgusted with ourselves. And so as humans, we've developed a little workaround for that, a little way of compensating or overcoming that internal feeling that we get when we feel disgust towards someone else, that I call it my shame button, that gets triggered when I feel like I've done something wrong or thought something wrong. We've developed this ability to dehumanize. And when we've developed this, developing this ability to dehumanize lets us off the hook. If I feel disgust for something, and I think that I shouldn't feel this way, if I can logically in my mind find something wrong with that other person, somehow find a way that they are inadequate or they're wrong or they shouldn't be, then I can let myself off the hook for feeling bad about it. Now, this is not a new concept. This has been around for, well, as long as history has told us. And we dehumanize people by the language that we use. The Nazis were really, really good at dehumanizing. Not only did they use their language, but they used images. The Nazis considered people of the Jewish faith to be rats. They called them rats. They created pamphlets and posters that depicted the Jewish people as rats. Imagine what that does to dehumanize. To make people buy into the story that they're telling. The Rwandans, not that many years ago, in their struggle, called the Tutsi people cockroaches. And what do you do with cockroaches? You got to stamp them out. Early settlers in America called the indigenous people savages. They weren't human, they were savages. And of course, those people who chose to enslave African Americans in our country used terms that were animalistic, like buck or mare, creating a sense that these people were less than human. It has been going on for millennia. This idea that we can say someone is less than us. We can dehumanize them. The most recent one is the term illegals. Using that to call people who are trying to get a better life in a different country. It's not even a noun, it's an adjective. And yet it's become a name for a group of people. Because they can dehumanize them. They can get them to get other people to buy into their belief that these people are less than they are. If we can make somebody else less, sometimes we feel better. I remember telling that to my second and third graders when someone was picking on them in school. Well, they just do that because they feel bad about themselves. And so they're looking for a way to make themselves feel better. I'm not sure it helped. But I couldn't say it nowadays. We don't do that. We don't tolerate that at all, even. But language matters. This is what Brene Brown says. Language matters. It changes how we feel about ourselves and others. With the same amount of power, language can also be used to strip people of their dignity and their humanity. With awareness about how dehumanization works. With awareness about how dehumanization works comes in there twice, comes the responsibility to call out dangerous language when we recognize it. To call out that dangerous language when we recognize it. In other words, we don't tolerate it. This goes back to Buddha's right speech. What is the language that you're using? Where's the language coming from? Is the language used to harm or to help? How are we using it? You know, right now we are such a culture of media in all different forms. And what is media about? It's all about language. We're either reading it, or we're hearing it, or someone is speaking it. And so it's always an opportunity to look at the language that's being used and call it out when it's dehumanizing others. You know, I think so much of what the trauma is that we're experiencing right now, the turbulence that we're experiencing, comes from fear. And fear is all about, well, when we're afraid, we want to find someone to blame for that fear because we don't like that feeling of fear. It's uncomfortable. And so we look to find some reason for it, something that makes sense in our minds. And I think one of the most powerful things that people can do is to tell us what we're afraid of and then tell us who to blame. Because then we can have some place to put our emotions and our feelings. And then if we can dehumanize those people, then it becomes even easier for us to feel that way. So how do we get around this? How do we get to a place in our world and our existence where we can feel okay about this? So going back again to our science of mind principles, the first thing we need to do, again, this is a Buddhist technique too, is cultivate inner peace. When I feel distraught within myself, I look to the reason for that. And then I take steps to feel peaceful again. For me, it's always dropping into my heart and breathing from my heart, as Karen had us do, breathing in through our nose and our heart and out through our mouth and our heart. Imagine if everything that came out of your mouth came through your heart. How would your language change? If everything was filtered through our heart, how would we hear things differently? I breathe it in through my heart. I take it in through my heart. I think I could be a lot more forgiving to other people if I did that more often. If I filtered all the things that I hear in the world through my heart, how much different would my experience be? And if I filtered everything that I said through my heart, how much difference would the experience of other people be by the words that I say? Keeping ourselves heart-centered is a way that we can build resilience, cultivate that sense of inner peace. And most importantly, it's a way that we can be supportive to others. You know, here we have a beautiful, supportive community. And I know that there are lots of people in here that think differently than I do. And that's what makes it wonderful. And I know that we have a better time of it when we can hear things through our heart and speak things through our hearts. That everyone has a different experience with what is going on in the world when we keep ourselves heart-centered. We're all about practices here. I love this passage, and I couldn't find where I got it from, so it's anonymous. We are constantly working on ourselves, or we are working against ourselves. Which one do you want to be doing? Working for yourself, for your own enlightenment, for your own sense of inner peace, for your own contentment and well-being, or working against yourself? Remember, it always starts with us. We can't spread love out into the world if we can't feel it in ourselves. We can't be kind to other people if we can't find a place of kindness within ourselves. And so our job is to constantly work on ourselves. I happen to be one of those people that likes Facebook. So I found this meme about 3 days ago. So I thought I'd share it with you. Is that not the truth? I have been here 47 years. I have never seen a road without work on it. I'm just saying. What was it they told us years ago, that the Nevada state bird was the crane? All right, let's take this into prayer. I invite our spiritual practitioners to stand and surround us. Holding us in consciousness throughout the week is their pleasure and their joy. And if you would, just take a moment, take in a breath. And again, like Karen told us, breathe in through our hearts. And so right here and right now, I know that there is only one. One power, one presence, one divine creative love intelligence that has brought forth everything into existence. I know this one as love, as the heart of all life. I know this one as a place of peace and understanding. I know that goodwill is the nature of this creative love intelligence, and that it is pouring itself forth through all of its creation. And because I know there's only one, I know that I am one with it. That love intelligence has brought me into existence to live itself through me, as me, in all that I am and all that I do. I know that I am simply a vessel for the perfection of the divine to manifest itself into form. And as I know this is true for me, I know this is true for everyone. For we are all that unique and perfect emanation of a love so powerful that it could do nothing but create more of itself over and over and over again. And so knowing this truth, I speak my word. I know that right here and right now, within each and every one of us, lies a heart of pure love. A heart that is beating itself into perfection and into expression through everything that we are and everything that we do. And I know that at any time that we forget this, we can simply drop back into that heart space, the center of our being, and feel that overwhelming love intelligence bringing itself forth. I know that this is a way to heal our world. I know that this is a way to overcome tumultuous times and any turmoil or fear or doubt or anger that we ever feel. can simply dissolve itself in the power of that heart. I am so, so grateful to know this. I'm so, so grateful to feel it. I'm grateful to see it operating in this community and beyond these walls. For I know that each one of us is that perfect, heart-centered vessel of love intelligence. And so I release this word into the law, into that creative mind that always says yes, that knows no lack or limitation, that has never seen discord or fear. I let it go, and I let it be. And together we say, and so it is.